Learning Ally is a proud sponsor of the Empowered Dyslexia podcast. Learning Ally, a nonprofit education organization, helps to transform the lives of struggling learners by delivering proven solutions that help students reach their potential. We have a heritage of supporting students with a reading deficit like dyslexia. Our award-winning Human Read audiobook solution helps students in grades 3 through 12 access books they want and need to read to help them succeed. Visit www.learningally.org for more information.
Hello world, wake me up to another good morning, time to go. Oh, we are all looking for adventure. We are all looking for
adventure. I'm your host, Stephen Yearout, and on this show, we're here to help each of us become a better informed partner in education. On this show, we discuss dyslexia, we discuss other related disorders, we discuss research, interventions, special education policy at the local, state, and federal level. We also interview experts in their fields, and the thing that I love the most is the personal stories. Be sure to like us on Facebook and subscribe to us on our YouTube channel. Let's make sure that please comment and share, because that helps us with our algorithm with YouTube. As always, you can get our podcasts on any of the apps that you enjoy listening to your favorite podcasts. Spotify, iHeart, iTunes, Google, Alexa. Now we're on Pandora. So, I mean, you name it, we're there. If you like watching the shows, obviously you can get them on Facebook Live, YouTube Live, and now all of our shows are on IGTV on Instagram. No, but it's an idea of what you have, right? What you have dreamed about. You know, I asked my mom the same question. Right? It's to put some contrast between what you grew up thinking that you wanted to have versus
what you got.
Right? So now what you got is 3 beautiful boys.
Yes.
And 3 dyslexics.
Yes. Yes.
So only one of our boys does not have dyslexia.
Yes.
So when we're looking at, the marriage unit, the husband and the wife, and, we were talking about, not necessarily roles, but, my feelings of I was supposed to be a provider and everything else. And there was a lot of intimidation there also with, the fact that you were so successful in school, and that, you had, even though I worked, but you had a real job, quote unquote real job. I had to do things that somebody gave me an opportunity, and then I would take that opportunity and do the best out of that opportunity. I was given a couple of really good opportunities to get into sales, to get into, that type of thing. And I mean, it was my wheelhouse, obviously, right? But there was also, and I don't know if you saw it or if I ever led on to it, but did you ever see that intimidation, or that, I don't know if intimidation is the right word, but maybe it is intimidation is the right word.
I did not ever see that, and that kind of goes back to some stuff where you always had this this confidence, where now you tell me that you weren't confident in anything, but you portrayed that this confidence, and I know what I'm doing and I know what I'm talking about, and I do feel like you always knew what you were doing and talking about. but you may not have believed it as much as everybody else believed it. And
Oh, if I said it, I knew.
right. But I mean, that confidence piece,
Right.
people saw you as a very strong, confident person, and still see you that way. And I didn't learn until very recently that you did not feel that way about yourself when you were younger. And so that was weird, because I was always like the more quiet, reserved one.
I mean, when we met, you were very timid, very quiet. You wouldn't speak up.
That's
You wouldn't take up for yourself at all.
right.
And I remember how it would make me angry
Right.
that you would allow people to walk all over you.
And usually it was at work.
Yeah.
I always had that one person at work, whether it was my direct supervisor.
I remember that one boss that would do it to you, and I told you, if you don't go in there and say something, I'm going to go in there and say
Right.
something.
Right.
And that was when you changed, because you went in there and had a discussion with them. And from that point on, you got to see that when you stand up for yourself,
Right. Things change.
you advocate for yourself,
Yeah.
things change.
And I never would have, I know I would have never done that before, because to me, when you're in a situation like that, that is questioning authority. And I was not raised to question authority at all. And what my parents said was it. We didn't, especially, growing up as a small child where everything is a certain way, and you do what you're told. And that there was just no question about that. And I do think that I pretty much carried that throughout my teenage years. I mean, there's, no one's perfect. I'm not perfect. There's lots of things I did that my parents probably just didn't even know about. But I think for the most part, if you talk to my parents, all of them collectively, because it would take all four of them to bring out the different aspects, to say that, yeah, I was a very compliant child and teenager. I did what I was supposed to do. I didn't really talk back. And I think because I was afraid to an extent of what it might look like, because what was going on in my home, my younger sister was very defiant. My older sister was very defiant. They were pushing on both sides, and I just had to kind of stay under the radar. And that's what I did. I just did what I was told. I didn't get in trouble. I stayed under the radar. So I did get in trouble that my parents didn't know about because I was under the radar. And they were taking so much of that attention, which you know how that goes. And your sister and I have talked about that, where someone in the home is taking up all of the resources, which are the parents, taking up everything from them. So the other ones, we don't get neglected, but it is neglect. We get left because I don't have to worry about Amy. She's doing what she's supposed to do. She's doing great in school. She's got a job. She's got a car. She's making her payments. It doesn't matter. Amy's doing good. We got to focus on these other kids. But we are guilty of that. I mean, we went through that with our own kids, because there is certain aspects of your life where your kids are going to require more attention than sometimes the other children. And so if you have one who you're constantly focusing on that student, on that kid, because I say student because it's always going to be, for us, it's always been around school. So our one kid who needs all that extra attention for education purposes, to continue to keep him successful, our other kids stay under the radar. And then all of a sudden, they're treading water and they're drowning. And we've missed it. So that's hard. That's really difficult. That's a difficult realization. I never really looked at it that way when I was a teenager, especially because I'm like, I don't have a curfew. I don't have to do all these different things. Life is good.
Well, let me jump in there real quick. And, you talk about questioning authority. That piece of it played a role in my relationship with your family
Oh, yes.
because I
Because
didn't,
the year outs question authority.
well, and, not only do we question it, we throw it out
Right.
90% of the time.
Right.
If you can't explain to us why or what or whatever, well then,
But that was how your home was like that. Everything in your home was like that, where it was very much.
no,
This is-
my parents didn't want me to question their authority. I just did.
Right, that's what I mean.
So-
where your parents would say something and you were constantly questioning what they were saying. And so from an early age you learned to do that, and then you've just continued.
Right.
Which is why we are here, honestly. And why we've been able to get to this point with our kids and our school district and this podcast and reaching people across the world is because you don't take the gospel from one person. You're going to go and find out all the intricacies behind it. Let's get all the details before we can make a decision. And that's what makes you good at what you're doing. Not everybody does that. And it takes some kind of event sometimes, like me going and talking to that boss. And in fact, I've had 2 bosses where I've had to do that. And I think that when you are finally faced with an opportunity, really, to question that person who's supposed to be of authority, and really talk to them and ask them why they're doing things a certain way or why you're expected to do things a certain way, that changes perspective on all fronts.
Oh yeah, because in our relationship, you went from somebody that wouldn't say anything to now, I mean, we definitely have an equal voice in our marriage, which we should have.
Right.
But
sometimes I'm
when
over the top.
No, what I'm saying is when you have somebody that won't speak up for themselves, regardless if that person is meaning to not manipulate, but to run shot, to do everything their way, it tends to happen
Right.
just out of human nature, right? It's
Because
the other person doesn't speak up and say anything.
Right. I mean, if I'm not going to question your authority or question your
And
decisions,
not necessarily
no.
authority,
Right. But just in general, if we're making decisions or we're having a discussion about a decision that needs to be made, and I'm like, okay, just do whatever. Well, then that gives you permission to do whatever you want, and make that, whatever decision it's going to be. And that's okay in some situations. Most of the time I don't do that, and we can disagree on things, and a lot of times I will still defer to your decision. We don't agree on this, however, you're in charge, you're the head of the household, and so whatever you decide is what we're going to do. And that to me is part of that upbringing where I do feel like we are equal, absolutely 100%. We are an equal partnership in this marriage and with our children. However, you do have the final say so. And there aren't a lot of people like me out there.
Well, part of what was really tough for me was because of all the crap that was going on in my childhood, I became a very astute manipulator. So I had to, for our marriage sake and for our mental sake, I had to unlearn that, right? So where you're saying, I defer to you, I had to make a conscious effort, a long time ago, that to not do those certain things to give you that equal voice, to give you that equal, playing field.
Right.
Because otherwise it would have crashed and burned.
Yes.
So, I'm glad that we grew up together. And I mean that wholeheartedly, is that we grew up together.
Yes.
It wasn't, we've just been roommates. We've grown and really looked at, what is best for my partner. And
what can we do to make this better?
What can we do to make this better? What can we do to make Amy and Stephen family 2.0, 3.0? I mean, we're on edition 26 now. I mean, it keeps, and I guess that's what you really are supposed to do.
Right.
And from the dyslexia side and the ADHD side, I had to constantly face my fears or face that demon in order to, from my perspective, in order to make our life, our marriage better. And I never felt like although I could have, I know that I could have, I never felt like I could actually have that conversation, because it meant admitting failure.
Well, in your opinion, that's what you think.
Well, no, I mean, that's what it was for me. It was admitting failure, admitting,
but for
admitting
me,
that because like you said, I always had this persona of, I know all and I can do all.
right.
However,
That
I come in
confidence.
and say, I don't know how to do this,
Right.
or I can't do this
I
because
think it's more of the vulnerability of it, really. I mean, that's kind of how I look at it. And it's kind of that gender role too, where I'm the man, I'm supposed to be strong, and I'm supposed to do this, and I'm supposed to do that, and all these expectations that we've kind of placed on ourselves because of our gender roles. But when it comes down to us, you're Steven. You don't have to be anything other than Steven. And I don't have to be anything other than Amy. And I think that's really hard for a lot of people. We get into this cycle of what we're expected to do. And we all are going to fail. We're all going to fail. And we do fail every single day. And we just have to get to that point where we can say, you know what? I know this is what the expectation is. And I just couldn't do it. And being able to communicate that way versus getting into a huge fight over something. I mean, that just goes to prove that working on stuff together is always going to give you the better outcome. And I think that's where we've gotten over, all of these years, that we've been able to continue to work together, and it hasn't always been fun.
So you now have 3 boys,
Yes.
2 of which are dyslexic, and a husband who's dyslexic. So we joke and call our house the dyslexia house.
Yes. Aiden came up with that.
Yep. Coming from somebody that didn't grow up with learning disabilities or even the knowledge of anything about learning disabilities, to coming into a house full of it, what is that like?
That is a little painful, to be honest. Asher, when he was little, it was very easy to teach him, basically. He was able to talk really quickly. He learned sign language. He always wanted to be read to. He wanted to write his name. I mean, I can't even remember how old he was, but he craved that. And so we started doing all of these workbooks and I was trying to just teach him anything that I could teach him. And he decided that when he was 4, he no longer wanted to take naps. And I was like, Mom, I need you to take a nap. And he didn't want to take a nap. So he and I came up with an agreement that we would go into the boys' room, and we had a bunk bed and a crib, because all of them were so close in age, that Asher would lay on the top bunk, and I would lay on the bottom bunk with Aiden, and Ashton would be in his crib. And I would have to lay on my side and put my arm around Aiden like this and just hold that kid so tight to get him to go to sleep. And then we had to slither like snakes out of the bed and like crawl out of the room so that Ashton didn't see over the bumper on the crib and Aiden didn't budge, so that we could go downstairs and read, because he wanted to read. And so I got him these workbooks where he started learning about all the different countries and, just different things about all the states. He was just in awe.
So let me ask you a question. So you were saying that he always wanted to read.
Mm-hmm. Well, he wanted me to read.
So that was going to be my question is, I remember vividly Asher doing some things that gave me flashbacks.
Right.
And I made the comments a couple times about, he would always love to read, and he would be sitting, his bed faced the doorway, so you'd walk down the hall and you'd see him sitting there on his bed, in the middle of his bed, with a book.
So I was like, oh, my child.
Yeah. And I always looked at him, I was like, are you reading those books? And he was like, oh, yeah.
Oh, yeah, I'm reading. Oh, yeah. Diary of a Wimpy Kid.
Diary of a Wimpy Kid, I'm reading them.
Oh, my gosh.
I was like, what is it about? It's about a kid with a diaper, and he's...
a diaper.
Didn't he wear a diaper?
No, not so much. That's Captain Underpants.
Whatever.
You're
whatever.
Right.
He would tell me. I didn't realize the book had pictures in it because I never opened it up. And he would tell me a little bit about the story. However, I was like, okay.
You didn't read it. These were new chapter books that we had never experienced.
And, I didn't want to, quote unquote, put that on my child that he may be dyslexic.
Right.
Because when I don't know who told me this, but we had went to a counselor or psychologist or something, whatever it was. And I was told that the reason why I had dyslexia was because my dad was an alcoholic before I was born. Many years before.
Right.
And
many years before. Right.
He had stopped drinking.
Right.
I think he had stopped drinking like 6 years before I was born.
I do believe he did.
6 or 7 years.
Mm-hmm.
And I didn't know any different.
Right. Well, and your parents didn't know any different.
Well, my mom says she doesn't remember that, but for whatever reason,
you remember that.
I remember it. So
interesting, right?
Yeah.
But that goes along with the adage of, well, if you read to your children more, they're going to learn to read, and they're going to learn to love to read. And that's not the case. We know that now.
You used to read to the... So, as we're talking about married with dyslexia and how that brings up issues in your marriage, this was one of the things that there was not resentment, but I never got to experience the things that you got to experience with them due to reading. And I was talking to one of our friends that lived with us for a little bit, and we were talking about reading story time, bedtime. And she said, that was the one time that I so miss, even today, is sitting there listening to Amy read to the boys. And you would sit up there for hours and read to them.
Until they fell asleep every night. And
I knew I could never experience that. And it always tore me up that I
Right.
couldn't, until I was like, you know what? I'm going to show Amy.
And you did.
So I was like, you know what? Tonight, Mom's not going to read y'all a book. It's going to be daddy time. And I remember the boys like, yeah, jumping around on the bed.
Right. I still sat down in the rocking chair, and you laid down on one of the beds or sat on the beds, and everyone was excited. So I'm like, okay, well, what's Steven gonna do?
And I go, Asher, jump up there and you pick any book you want.
And we had, I mean, not hundreds, but
I had a
lot.
whole bookshelf.
A lot of books. We had every kind of book you could think of, and then we would have like the big story books that had 50 different stories in them. They were fairy tales, and I mean, we didn't have the Cinderella books obviously because of the boys, but we had everything you could think of.
So Asher and Aiden jumped up and stormed the bookshelf, climbed up on the counter, and pulled down a book. So instead of reading it to them, what'd I do?
So, and this is where Stephen kind of, and it's resentment, and it's okay to have that resentment, that feeling of resentment that he didn't get to read to the boys because he wasn't a good reader. Where I am not as creative, and I can't just make stuff up. I've really never been able to do that. So Stephen is able to get a book. The boys pick out a book. He opens the book. He's, all of them have pictures at this point. And he opens the book, and he's able to make something up on the fly using all the boys' names as the characters based on the photo in the book, whatever the illustration is. And I mean, they were just hanging on every single word, and they were just in awe. They thought it was the best story. And I was so mad. I was mad because I'm like, well, that's not fair. I've been sitting here for years, in this rocking chair for years, reading to them every single night. And I mean, they'll stop and ask me questions, and that's fine. But it was nothing like how excited they were when Daddy came in to read a story. And so, but now I'm like, that is the coolest thing ever. Right? And I think our boys, as they get older, they'll be able to appreciate that as well. Asher probably already does. Aiden, not so much maybe, but just being able to appreciate the fact that, yeah, my dad might not have been able to read the best as far as fluency, but he darn sure came in there and gave us the best bedtime story, and it wasn't just the one time. It was multiple times that you would do that, and as they were getting older, and they could really understand kind of like that creativity piece of it. But yeah, that was like one of the best things. And I don't remember like story time or anything like that when I was little. I mean, that doesn't mean it didn't happen. I just don't remember it. But it was one of the things I do vividly remember making that decision. Like, I have a rocking chair, and they're all in the same room. We're going to read stories until they fall asleep every night. And that's what I did. And as I got older and more opinionated, I even typed every title to every story, including all the ones that were inside the big books. Typed them all out into, a Word doc, I guess. Printed it, cut it up, folded it, or just put the strips in a little container, like a Tupperware container, so that we didn't have to argue about what we were reading. And because they got to the point where Aiden and Asher wanted to pick the story every night. So instead of them always picking like their favorite story, I would go through the bucket, and so they would pick out a story every night. And then as they got older, we got to read more interesting things, interesting for me at least. Asher really, really loved Percy Jackson. And so I started reading Percy Jackson to him and that whole series. And man, it was awesome. So awesome. And then I have like a 365 Bible story book that was really an old book. I mean, I got it from your sister, and I know she had read it to the kids, but it was even older than that. So so it was just this really old book, kind of tattered. The pages were really orangey yellow from age, and like it was in a garage sale pile. I think that's why she was like, just grab it if you want it. And at the end of each little section, it would have questions that you could ask about the readings or about this whatever part. I mean, and so I was always so excited, like, oh, I'm going to ask them questions. And so I would ask them the questions, and just listening to their cute little responses was so much fun. And, you know, I've kind of threatened them a little bit with, we're going to do story time again. Because I just felt like that inclusion of all of us doing something together. And I said, I don't, like, at first Aiden was like, I'm not going to sit down and read with y'all. You know, like, I said, no. I want to read. I want to read to you guys again. And, you know, whatever we decide to do, but just to have that family time again, where we do something like that. I mean, I know they're all big, you know, but it's okay. We're home in the evenings, so might as well. So, I mean, you know, I don't know if I'm going to implement that on the first of the year, because we are doing the Bible 365 this year. So that might be enough reading for them. Who knows? So we'll see. But that is a favorite thing of mine from when they were little.
So you're going to say that your child wouldn't be dyslexic if you read to him more is a myth?
I would say that's a big myth. I mean, I want to put like a big rubber stamp on that myth. You know, it is.
So it's busted.
It's busted for sure. Not a fact. Which of these is not a fact?
Right. So let's jump back into, you know, we were talking about Asher always wanting to read.
Right.
And you were saying that he did speak really early.
Right.
However, he stuttered really bad.
He did. He stuttered, and
he went through about 6 months of speech.
He did. He had private speech therapy at our home before he even started school.
And I honestly believe that masked his dyslexia.
Yes, I agree.
So
I think so too.
I think that
was he had a really bad lisp, and we were like, I don't want him to go to school and get made fun of. And that was like our biggest concern. We want him to speak properly, but we don't want him to go to school and get made fun of. Not knowing that every kindergarten, first grade, second grade, dang near third grader speaks with some sort of impediment, whether
Right.
it's improper, lisp, stutter, whatever it is. It's rampant, right? But this was our oldest child. We didn't know. You don't know what you don't know, right?
Well, I mean, he at what was it, 6 months old, he was already signing like 20 different signs.
By a year old, he could say about 20 different words verbally.
Right. So he was speaking through sign language, speaking through, you know, regular speech. He was so far advanced from what everybody was telling us.
Right.
That we never even...
It was not on our radar at all. I do think having all of the therapy masked his dyslexia, or gave him an opportunity to, or taught him enough to get him to a certain point. And so here's Asher going into, you know, kindergarten, does great. He's going into first grade, does great. And then Aiden starts kindergarten. It's about the same. Doing great. don't really see many issues as far, same teacher that Asher had. Aiden was lucky enough to have the same kindergarten teacher. So, we know the teacher's doing everything the same way she did it the year before. All of the work looks the same. The output looks the same. So, no real issues. First grade, immediately, I remember you were like, he's dyslexic. We need to get him tested for dyslexia. And
we were told we don't test until third grade.
And that was the norm.
And
that was the norm, though.
As parents,
that
new
was
parents.
In 2013. He's a freshman now.
Yeah, but as new parents, you don't know to question that.
Right.
Right?
Right. Well, and teachers didn't know any different because that's what the schools were telling it's all coming down from the top. So we have our SBOE that says these are the standards. And so it gets pushed down and shoved down our throats that this is what the norm is and this is what we're going to do. And so we're like, okay, we don't test until third grade. Okay. Well, we watched him struggle all through first grade.
Struggled all through first grade, struggled.
Second grade, though, all of his teachers were amazing. And let me go back to this. His first grade teacher said, you're right. He is struggling in these areas. However, this is what we don't,
It was the wait and see.
Right, the wait and see. And that was because that's what the districts do. That's what all the schools do. That's what all the special education people say.
And let me stop you right there for just a second and just say to any new parent that's out there that has a child in this situation, do not wait. Do not allow them to tell you that you need to wait and see.
Yeah.
So, sorry, go ahead.
Right, and I don't think that's happening as much. I know it's not happening as much in Texas. Other states may be different, but here we've really been able to get past that. So that's good. Amazing teachers, he's doing decent. Okay, we start spelling tests in first grade. They were horrific. He did okay in math, but he was always a little bit slower on those timed sheets where, okay, how many can you get through? Move on to second grade, another amazing teacher. And I'm like, oh, maybe he's over the hump. Maybe he's doing better because we really haven't had as many issues. We haven't seen as many problems. Second grade homework looks a little bit different than first grade homework. So you're not doing as much reading and, or at least reading for us to hear fluency. His teacher, again, and we didn't know this until close to the end of the school year, second grade. We finally realized Aiden was allowed to go back and redo a lot of his work that he was turning in because he would rush through it and turn it in, and basically it would be a 0 because all the answers would be wrong. And so she would allow him to redo it, and he would get a better score, but never really where it needed to be.
Well, I also remember with Aiden, man, the flood of emotions, and it took me back to a not so fun time.
Right. Because we would sit there and fight him to do the work. Because in our elementary schools, and I'm sure most, I don't think the elementary school that I'm currently at now doesn't do this, but for a good while, on Mondays you would get your little homework folder, right? And it would have the week's worth of work, and you would take it home on Monday and you'd have all week to do it. So each day we would try and do, on Mondays we would try and do 2. And our kids did extracurricular activities outside of school. And it was weekdays. So we would try and, okay, well, on Tuesday, we have this extra time. So we're going to do extra work so that tomorrow we don't have to do it. On Wednesday, we don't do Wednesday's work. We can wait till Thursday to do the rest. However we did it. And it was a battlefield. Nothing like what we had to do with Asher. Same teachers. Asher and Aiden had the same kindergarten teacher. They had the same first grade teacher. Second grade, different. But I just remember that battle of getting him to at least do the work, write the letters, color in the whatever, continue the pattern. It's not hard work, but it's work that it's stuff they have to learn. And it was a fight. He did not want to do it.
I remember you getting really angry.
Oh my gosh, I was just furious because I didn't understand.
And you'd be like, well, you're dyslexic, so you couldn't deal with it.
But that was...
But
yes.
It was because I understood what he was going through.
Right, where I didn't.
And you didn't, and I understood from my mom's aspect where you were headed.
Right.
So, we tag teamed this a lot where we're like, all right, you need to...
Yeah, it's your turn.
You need to go...
I'm over it. So, 3rd grade came along, and academically, he's doing great. And that was, I think, the hardest part for us to really understand. Because at this point, we still didn't know what we know now about dyslexia, what we've educated ourselves on. But academically, he was doing great. Like his report cards, his progress reports, everything, he was doing A's and B's, A's and B's, A's and B's. But he was still not where he needed to be when it came down to those milestone testing. And so that was 2nd grade was the year where they started MAP testing. And so 3rd grade MAP scores and STAR. And I think that's where we were like, there's something going on. And I think it was obviously it was before the end of the school year.
It was before STAR came around because we knew that there was something going on.
And we wanted to make sure we got ahead of that.
Right. We wanted to make sure that if he was dyslexic, that we got the accommodations that were going to help.
So I remember vividly in 3rd grade for him, maybe beginning of the year doing MAP testing, and then we called a meeting to see if we could get him, or we wrote a request for testing, got the testing done, had a meeting, and then it was just like, I don't even really remember. We had a meeting, we said these are the accommodations, okay, this is what we're gonna do, okay, bam, bam, done. Like, here we go, rest of 3rd grade. So at the end of 3rd grade, I remember it was like the end of school year conferences, and we went in and sat down with Aiden's 2 teachers and the principal. And this was the, hey, we think it's a good idea to retain your student talk. And I knew this was not going to be beneficial for him just mentally. And Stephen knew it wasn't going to be beneficial at all because he's been there, done that. So, we had to have that conversation with the teachers, and that was really frustrating too, because again, parents are led to believe that schools can retain your children, that STAR is a pass or fail, that MAP does determine everything, and that is really just not the case.
It put me back in such a bad place. I was angry for a long time.
Yes, you were.
And I was going to fight anybody that said anything any differently because I knew how that was for me.
Right.
I remember them saying, well, we're going to retain him. And I was like, no, you're not. And then they said, well, he failed the STAR test. I went, yeah, but he made all A's and B's in your class. And they're like, well, he failed the STAR test. And I went, well, either you gave him the grades or he earned the grades. Which is it? And they were offended that I basically accused them.
Questioned the authority.
Yeah, that their integrity, that they would have given him grades.
Right.
And so they went from that to, well, we're going to go to, then he needs to go to summer school. Then I asked the question, again, questioning the authority. how long have you had my son in your class? And they said 180 days.
All year.
I said, well, how long is summer school? They said, what was it, 4 weeks?
4 weeks.
So I asked,
Half days.
number one, if you retain him, how are you going to teach him differently the second time?
Or is the curriculum changing?
Or is the curriculum changing? They said no. So to me, that doesn't make any sense.
Right.
And then two, when I asked him how many days did you have, and then how long summer school was, my next question was, how are you going to be able to teach him in 4 weeks what you couldn't do in 180 days?
Right.
And
That
while
And
it was me being a smartass,
right, and it wasn't meant to.
but it was and it wasn't. Right. It was because I wanted to show them how silly what they were
Right.
saying.
It just sounded so
Because they
ridiculous.
were just repeating things that they've said so many times
Right.
to so many other parents.
Right.
But to me, it
Like,
was,
it doesn't add up and it doesn't make sense. So we're not going to do that.
they might as well have been turning the knife in my back, because it immediately made me feel that way, that I was back in school.
Right.
So, that's really what started this,
Well, I think
this
at this
big
point,
fight.
to an extent, I think so. I think at this point, we get through the end of third grade.
Well, even being dyslexic, I didn't really understand what dyslexia was or what could be done about it.
Yeah.
So neither one of us did.
Right. And Aiden had been in intervention classes with a therapist at school for about 6 months, about half the school year in third grade.
Sorry to keep interrupting you, but how we felt, and I know that a lot of other parents feel this way too, was, by this time it was third grade. We noticed it in first grade. So now we're finally got somebody to say, yes, we tested him. Yes, he's dyslexic. Yes, yes, yes.
Look at what we could have done
Well,
in that
not
amount of time.
yeah, there's that piece of it, but it is that now I can breathe, that somebody finally acknowledged
Right.
that what I was saying was true.
Right.
And now they're saying that they're going to help. And, this is all the stuff that we're going to do, not necessarily questioning or even knowing that you should question number one, what is the program?
Right.
How is it going to help my child? How is it going to help him in the areas that he's weak in?
Well, and luckily for us, we were in an environment where we did get to sit down initially and look at the program and get information about the program, and it all looked and sounded great, and Aiden did really well. We saw improvements immediately with his fluency, immediately with his decoding skills, and he had an amazing teacher. He went through therapy with her for all of fourth grade, and then again in fifth grade. He was so close to finishing the program. About a month you think about a month
Yeah.
at the end of the school year, month before school was out, we changed schools, and Aiden ended up going to the same elementary school that Stephen went to, so that was kind of cool. Our neighborhood elementary school. We were at a charter before, and so Aiden still had about 6 weeks left of his program that he was in. Regardless, he wouldn't have finished it necessarily if he had stayed, because that was the time where they started to kind of, reevaluate things for the next coming school year, for the students coming in and students moving up, etc. So we weren't necessarily going to be finishing up the program in fifth grade, regardless of if we were there or at the other school. And we knew going into middle school for sixth grade in Garland, they're in middle school. We knew going into middle school he was going to have to continue.
Well, he was going to have to lose an elective.
Well, we didn't know that yet necessarily, but we knew he was going to have to continue his intervention. So we finished that school year. Everything's great. Sixth grade starts for him. We're lucky that the district we live in, is all choice of school. So you get to pick whatever school you want to go to and hope that you get your first choice. We picked a school based on, we really had not done a lot of research into any of our local schools. All I knew and all Stephen really knew was that it was choice of school. So we just had to ask around and ask people that we knew. We got a great recommendation on the middle school. So that's where we went. And very early in the first couple of days, coming home, we're excited. They're, in a new school. Asher finished his 6th grade year at this school. So it wasn't necessarily new to him, but it was a new school year. Everyone's excited. The first couple of days, come home. How's it going? Had your teachers, And Aiden tells us about his block that he has set aside, or his class period that he has set aside for his intervention, and that he doesn't have a teacher. And I don't think I have ever seen you so angry when it came down to what was going on with school and the kids.
I love you. You mean the world to me. But I want to give you the last 2 minutes of the show to say whatever you want to say.
Well, thank you very much. I appreciate that. And sometimes it is hard. Early on, I did feel like I was contributing a lot, and I had the time to contribute. And then I went back to work, and I didn't have the time to contribute as much. And so that left me feeling very much like it wasn't my deal. This isn't my show. This isn't my game, and a lot of people remind me that it is still, very much me as it is Stephen. And I just feel like having this platform is so amazing, and we never really pictured that this is what we would be doing. And I never thought I would be sitting in a studio having a conversation about dyslexia. I never felt like I was educated enough to really know what to say or how to help people. However, that really has changed a lot. And, the more I become familiar with what is going on and how we can make change, the more I'm able to influence other people. And, just to be able to have that conversation with other educators, especially, and other parents and other kids, and just be able to say it's okay, and tomorrow's a new day, and we're going to keep fighting no matter what's going on. Just keep it up, keep fighting, keep doing what you think is best for your kid, for your student, for your grandchild, whoever it is in your life that you needs help. Just keep fighting. Reach out to us. We're always available. I laugh because Stephen does get a lot of phone calls, and there are times where I'm like, oh my gosh, get off the phone. You're on the phone all the time. But he's always helping somebody. And I think that's what makes the difference. So, reach out to us if you have questions, if you need help. We are always here, available and willing to share our knowledge and, do our best to help other families, especially. So again, thank you, Stephen, for asking me to be on the show. I think I kind of put it off as long as I could. So starting season 3 like this has been kind of fun, and I'm so excited for our future and what we are doing and the amount of people we're reaching globally. It's only going to get better. So thanks.
Absolutely. Well, this is it's been a great show.
Yeah.
I'm excited for season 3.
Me too.
I'm
a lot
excited.
of changes.
Yeah, new adventures.
Right.
I'm excited that we have the other shows coming online.
Absolutely.
I'm so proud of the boys, and doing student edition. I've said all along that we're going to change the world, and that's exactly what I mean. Is we're going to change the world. We're going to make sure that any child that needs help gets help.
Yes.
Any family that needs help gets help.
Right.
We want to make sure that they get the correct information to help them in their fight. So thank you so much for joining us. It means the world to me. It really does. So please be sure to like us on Facebook and subscribe to our YouTube channel. Please leave us some comments. It helps with the algorithms, telling me what a phenomenal job she did on this show. At the end of every show, we always recommend that if your child is struggling in school, don't wait.
Do not wait.
Don't allow them to make you wait.
Right. Don't let your child suffer, because that's what it is.
They are, and we know parents wouldn't allow
Right.
that,
Right.
but it is suffering. Get your child tested as soon as possible. We have some templates on our website. We actually have a new URL. It's www.empowereddyslexia.org. O-R-G. Knowing is half the battle. Without knowing what we are facing, we don't know what intervention to provide.
Right.
We don't know what supports we can put in place. So, early detection is so important.
Absolutely. It's key.
So, like we said earlier, we're always here. If you need help, please reach out. Email us. Find us on Facebook. We're on Twitter. We're on Instagram. Send us a message. We're here to help. Thank you for, the amount of support, the amazing amount of support that y'all have shown this show, and constant support each and every week.
It makes a difference.
It is an honor to do this show, and it's an honor to sit up here and provide the help and the support and fight for all of our kids. I'll lead the way every time. I'll lead us into battle if that's where we have to go.
Yes.
But we have to make sure that at some point, the fighting stops.
Right.
I don't want to fight. I don't want anybody else to have to fight. We don't need to fight. Just provide our kids the proper support and remediation that they need. So until next time, here is a word from our sponsors.
Oh, we are all looking for adventure. We are all.
Learning Ally is a proud sponsor of the Empowered Dyslexia podcast. At Learning Ally, we are always looking for new ways to engage readers struggling with a reading deficit like dyslexia and help them work to their potential. Visit www.learningally.org to learn about the Learning Ally audiobook solution, including which of your students are eligible for access. If you live in Texas, we have great news. The Texas Education Agency provides access to the Learning Ally audiobook solution for all K-12 public and charter school students with reading deficits. Get started today by visiting www.learningally.org/Texas.